In this video, we're going to take a look at how things in 3ds Max are measured. Let's make a box in the middle of our top view. And once we've done that, we'll head to the Modify column on the right-hand side, checking out our numbers. In the Parameters section, take a look at the length, width, and height on our box. It's frankly just a little bit tough to tell just exactly what we're dealing with here. There's no definitive indication as to how these values are being measured. In feet, inches, grid distances, it's just tough to tell. When 3ds Max ships from the factory, it's programmed to use a kind of default, nondescript way of measuring things, coming from more of an approach that if it looks right, it is right. And that works in many situations, as you can just kind of tell when something in your scene is out of proportion or scale. If your character's head, for an example, is too large or small, you can pretty much see that and make changes accordingly. Same would go for the hat or shoes that he's wearing, or maybe the car that he's cruising around town in. If things look off, you just adjust the size as needed. Well, that's not always going to work, as you have many applications like architectural visualizations, or let's say work for the courtroom or medical field, where exacting precision is much more of a concern. In those kind of situations, Max can easily be set up to do things in a more precise way. Here's how that's done. Let's head up to the Customize pull-down menu, and we'll choose Unit Setup. The default measuring system in Max is configured to be something that's referred to as simply a generic unit, which by default is programmed to be in 1-inch increments. We could instead set things up to work in metric measurements, for example meters, millimeters, or kilometers. There's also US Standard, which gives you the ability to measure in feet and inches. Those measurements going all the way down to 1/100th of an inch. And there's a custom measuring system, allowing you to set up more of a personal means of measuring that might best fit your style or way of working. Why don't we change things over to, let's say, using US Standard feet and fractional inches, and we'll take things to a 1/4 inch way of measuring. Let's now head back over to the Modify column and we'll check out the numbers on our box. Now we've got a measurement system that we can work with. Why don't we say that we're wanting to add a guest house onto the back part of our property? The plans have been drawn up and they're calling for a 30 by 40 foot concrete slab to be poured for the foundation structure. Let's go ahead and activate the length value and we'll type in 30 feet. We'll take the width to 40, then the height for our concrete slab, why don't we make that 8 inches? Feet are input by just typing in the number and pressing enter. Inches need the inch key on the keyboard added to the end of the number. That inch key would be the quotation mark that's right in the middle of your keyboard. As a side note, a decimal like 0.5 would be interpreted as half a foot. Once we've got our numbers in, let's right-click in the view, then center things up with Ctrl-Shift-Z. If you want to change that what needs to be typed in setting, you can simply reopen the dialog and make one quick adjustment. In the US Standard category, right below feet and fractional inches, you see default units. Let's change that from feet over to inches. We can then again close the dialog, clicking OK. Now if you type in 40 for the width, you get 40 inches, 3 foot 4 inches in other words. Having our setup now set to inches, to go back to 40 feet, we'd have to enter 40, then hit the feet key on the keyboard, in other words the hyphen. Why don't we also add a back wall? We'll do that in the front view, again using a box for that object. Why don't we also change the wireframe color of the box to, let's say, light blue so we can better see it in the scene. Then, before making any adjustments, I'll activate my perspective view, going full screen with the Alt-W keyboard combo. Okay, back to my values on the right. By adjusting the length spinner on our back wall, you'll notice that sometimes your directions just don't line up correctly. So you just got to keep your eyes on the viewport and adjust accordingly. The length setting, being that we created our wall in the front view, is actually the height on our wall. Let's make that 9 foot. Now remember, we set this to inches, so after 9, you're going to have to hit the apostrophe. Our width setting does stay as the width, so at 40 we're okay. For the height, which is actually now going to be the thickness of our wall, why don't we again go 8 inches? Having our controls shifted over from feet to inches, we can simply type 8, then enter. Now once I've done that, I'll activate the Move command and move the wall into position up against the floor. So that should give you a few options when wanting or needing a little extra precision in your work. You just figure out which measurement system best fits the job, then simply change the measuring method to suit what's needed.